how Luther's ideas spread and influenced other people, as well as John Calvin's ideas. If you look at what's showing right now, I just want to emphasize the importance of the printing press in spreading Luther's ideas, and with number 2, why they were called Protestants. You watched a video about this that explained why it was called the Protestant Reformation, but also I think your book mentions that they're protesting papal authority, and I just reworded it so it said the popes. I thought that might be easier for people to understand. If the video goes too fast and you need to catch up with information, then you should pause it at any point. So next up we have why people supported Luther. So for the clergy, people who perform religious services, they hoped he would fix the church corruption that was on pages 1 and 2 of this packet. You also have German princes, and there's a couple reasons why they want to support Luther, and it just has to do with less authority of the Catholic Church and Holy Roman Empire, as well as using church property for themselves. Lastly, other Germans had a lot of loyalty to Germany and wanted to keep German money in Germany as opposed to having it support the church in Italy. So be sure you have the key points, and then you can go to the next page. So the Peasants' Revolt. One important fact is the first bullet, so what the point of the Peasants' Revolt was or why they wanted to have it. Okay, so that's what they wanted. It's not what happened, but that's what they wanted. Okay, Luther didn't support the revolt. The peasants thought he would, but he preferred social order and respect for political authority, which is kind of ironic because he didn't respect the church authority because he didn't agree with it. But anyway, once the revolt got violent, he was against it and supported the nobles who wanted to stop the rebellion. So the peasants didn't end up helping them at all. They were hoping to reform their lives, but unfortunately it didn't work out for them. All right, next up, and then lots of people died and were left homeless. I guess that's an important fact too. Shows how it was violent. All right, then we move on to the Peace of Augsburg. So what happened to figure out like where Catholicism would be, where the Lutheranism would be, etc. And what you have is there was a compromise, and each prince in Germany was able to decide if his lands were going to be Catholic or Lutheran. Sorry. So this is just in Germany, and you can see in the notes what different parts of Germany picked. All right, so we have that resolution of the problem, and then you move on to Switzerland, and this will be about John Calvin. All right, so he had his own beliefs, and one really important belief of his was something called predestination. So if you have the right definition, you see that God has already figured out who's going to gain salvation or go to heaven. That was the belief that Calvin had. And there was 2 types of people in the world, saints and sinners. And if you acted like a saint, you would prove that God had you were predestined, you were already picked by God to go to heaven. So that's how they tried to live their lives, as saints. And once you go on the back and see the kind of like regulations and stuff that Calvin had for his society in Geneva, you'll see that it was pretty tough, and they were pretty demanding in terms of like what you were supposed to do or not supposed to do. Okay, so flip to the last page when you're all set. Okay, so in Geneva, Switzerland, Calvin led a community there, and if you look at the definition of theocracy, it mixes government and religion. Okay, so that's a little different than a lot of other places that we've studied, but that's what he believed in. And they thought that they were chosen people, chosen by God, and were special in that way. All right, so it was pretty harsh, or pretty tough. They were pretty tough standards to live by if you were in this community. and those are listed in the third bullet. So you should have some specific examples of qualities that were stressed by Calvin. Hard work, discipline, thrift, which means you're not spending too much money or spending extravagantly. Honesty, morality, that's showing that you know the difference between right and wrong. All right, so that's what was emphasized in the Calvinist community. And then you have next on the fourth bullet listed how you would be punished for certain offenses, and those are listed there. And he's pretty strict, I would say. You also what was forbidden besides what's listed there: singing, dancing, playing cards, or wearing fancy clothing. And people followed these rules to show that they believed they were saved. So you kind of had to act pretty perfect to prove God had already predestined you to get to heaven. Okay, so in the Calvinist community also, religious rules became laws for the government, so anyone who sinned was also committing a crime. So like I said up above, government and religion were mixed. Their church was really important to Calvinists. You went to services up to 5 times a week. This is just some extra information about Calvinism. You would have sermons that lasted for hours, and the sermons explain how you should live according to the Bible. Children had to be ready to answer questions from the minister at a moment's notice, and you could get in trouble or punished if you weren't able to do that. And also in the theocracy in Geneva, parents could only name their kids certain Christian names from the Bible. Guests at local inns had to be in bed by 9 o'clock at night. They weren't allowed to swear, dance, play cards, or insult anyone else at the inn. And the inn owner and anyone else at the inn, sorry, I'm talking too fast. Inn owners had to report anyone who broke the rules. And the same rules applied to people in their houses. The church leaders could inspect homes yearly to see if families were living by the strict Calvinist laws. You could be punished severely or banished from your hometown if you weren't following these laws. So he was very strict, John Calvin. All right, lastly, it's going to talk about, first of all, you have where Calvinist ideas spread to, and you have a bunch of countries listed there. You also have these new battles and wars over religion that occurred because of these new religions. So you should definitely have some specific examples of some conflicts that occurred, and if you don't, add them in. So first off, we have Germany, which has Catholic and Lutherans, ironically, versus Calvinists. Lutherans were a little offended that there was a new Protestant religion challenging them, so they sided with the Catholics. I don't know. The point is, there was just wars of religion over these religions because of the new ones. France, French Calvinists versus Catholics. England, some Calvinists went to the Americas because they were being persecuted. And then we have Scotland, an example of what happened in Scotland. John Knox versus rebelling against Catholic Queen. And then the Netherlands, some preachers went to the countryside to preach. So there's all the different conflicts that were occurring, and there's a lot of religious conflict still in the world and some areas of England. Different Protestant versus Catholic religions, people who are Protestant and people who are Catholic may not get along. So some of this hasn't disappeared. Okay, so you should hold on to this packet, and we will tape it in the coming days, and this information will be on the test, so be sure you don't lose it.